I'm Kayla Fisher. I'm a junior history major.
I'm Jacob Steiger. I'm the junior history and political science double.
All right, so what is your name and where are you from?
I'm Mathew McManus. I'm from Worcester, Ohio.
How long and what capacity did you serve in the Ohio National Guard?
I'm sorry, said
How long and in what capacity did you serve in the Ohio National Guard?
I served for 10 years in the Ohio National Guard. When I got out, I was a platoon sergeant.
And what led you to join the National Guard originally?
So,
Like what led you to join the National Guard when you first joined up?
well, the draft was in effect at that time, but we weren't in any war. John F. Kennedy was president, and the Cuban Missile Crisis had just ended. There wasn't any real pressure. I just knew that at some time I wanted to get the military out of my way, and I had to make a decision as to whether I wanted to serve at home or whether I wanted to serve on duty full time. And this young lady over there caught my eye one day, and she kind of made my mind up for me that I wanted to stay close to home.
Yeah, cute.
So looking back, how do you view your time in the National Guard?
How do I view it?
Yeah, how do you view your time?
Very interesting. I had no bad times I recall. I served in the state of Ohio in 5 different conflicts. I was in the Cleveland riots. I was in the Akron riots. We went from there to the floods of 1969 in southern Ohio. We went from there to the truckers' strike, and of course from there to Kent State.
Which one sticks out in your mind the most?
Kent State.
Kent State. So how was it that you were deployed to Kent State?
Sorry.
How was it that you were deployed to Kent State?
How was it that we was deployed? Well, we was kind of asking that question ourselves at the time. We was on the truckers' strike. The truckers' strike had just ended. That was terrible. A terrible ordeal where we had to stand on the overpasses in the cold April mornings. It was very cold for long hours, and keep the overpasses clear. It was different than a riot situation in that the truckers traveled in cars, and there would be a group of 4 or 5 maybe in a car, and that car would pick out an overpass that maybe only 2 guardsmen were standing on, and then they'd approach that. They'd pull up onto the overpass, trying to run the guardsmen over with their car. And when they stopped, they usually ended up in a fist fight or a fight on the bridges or on the overpasses at the time. It was a totally different kind of situation than riot control. There was no real control. We were ready to go home. We were cold. We were tired. We were wore out. We were sleeping in the rubber bowl in Akron, which is cold enough to begin with, I guess. But the day that we were told we were going home. And the trucks came in to pick us up. transport trucks came in to pick us up, and the convoy came in. And when we manned the convoy and loaded up the trucks with troops, we didn't turn west toward Worcester, Ohio. We turned east toward Pennsylvania. And it was all news to a lot of us as to just exactly where we were going. At first we thought maybe there was something to do with traffic and that we were just taking a different way home. But as it ended up, we ended up in the town of Penn, Ohio.
What were your thoughts? What did you think? Did you have any issues? Did you say anything to the drivers? How did you
No,
react?
the drivers didn't even know where they were going. The only person who knew where we were going was the commander, who was in the lead vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And he was waiting. We probably were loaded for a good hour before we pulled out, which was odd.
Yeah.
But we all thought we were going home, so we were happy about that. But no, the only person that knew where we were going was the commander, and he didn't say anything. He just led the convoy.
Mm-hmm. So, what are your memories of May 4th? What sticks out in your mind the most?
Gosh, I have so many memories. My best memory is Sunday, before May the 4th. I woke up to, after an all-night duty in front of the burned out ROTC building, I woke up to a meeting which I had to attend, and I had to attend to my troops. And one of my troops came to me and said, "Sergeant McManus, there's a football game going on in the practice field. Can you come and join us?" And I said, as soon as I have a chance, I'll stop up. And I'll never forget it. When I did get a chance and did make it to the field, there was a football game going on. I assumed they were talking about between the Guardsmen, but it wasn't. It was between students and the Guardsmen. There were several students, Kent State students, that were mixed with us. And we were playing touch football at the time, or they were playing touch football. I was approached by another one of my troop who said, "We need a euchre player. Do you know how to play euchre?" And I said, "Sure." Euchre was a very popular game in 1970. Everybody knew how to play euchre. And he introduced me to two co-eds, two young ladies, and a sergeant, not a sergeant, an officer from the Worcester Police Force who I knew from the Worcester unit. And we sat in a circle and we played euchre and watched the football game and talked. And that was the most productive day that I'd ever spent at any time I ever put the uniform on, really. We had open discussion. I don't know how many games we won or lost, but we were young people after all. At the time, I know I'm quite a bit older now, but at the time I was only 2 to 3 years older than the co-eds that I was playing euchre with. They asked questions like, what were those canisters on my lapel? And of course, answered their questions that it was gas canisters. and they asked questions like, particularly about the bullets. In Company A in the infantry, we always made a practice when we went into a riot area to wear a clip, a 9-round clip, on our lapel in plain view of the bullets that the weapons used. And there was quite a few questions asked about that. They wanted to feel them to see if they were real. They weren't sure they were real, but they were quite real, we told them. But that we, at least in prior to Kent State, we had never had to load them in a riot situation. We never got to that point that we had to use weapons.
And so, what do you recall from the next day, the following Monday?
The following Monday, oh my. Well, let's go back to the evening before, because it plays an important part. Around 5 o'clock that Saturday, that evening before, our commander came up onto that practice field where we was playing and having fun with the games, and he wasn't happy about it. He ordered myself and 2 other sergeants that were there to get the troops together and to march them down to our bivouac area and prepare for the evening duty. About that time, we heard sirens. Sirens started up. I think from the best we could tell, it was an ambulance taking somebody in the city that had a problem. I don't think it had anything to do with the students, but we could see the ambulance in the distance. But it was like a warning bell. It was like, okay, the fun and games is over and we're down to serious stuff again. The whole mood changed. I went on duty again around the now completely burned out and burned down our OTC building. It was just smoldering. There wasn't nothing to protect. And when I took the duty from the NCO that was in charge, when I relieved him of his duty and brought my men in, he told me that there was a group of students forming on a small tennis court in front of us and to kind of keep an eye on them. He said it was just a small group, which it was. As darkness fell, that group grew to be close to 100 students, quite a few. And I become concerned, so I sent my runner to the company headquarters to give a message to the company commander that we may need reinforcements. And we kept an eye on what was happening in front of us. I call them instigators. They're individuals. I don't know if they're selected ahead of time or not. It seems they are, because I've seen them in Cleveland. I've seen them in the Akron riots. They're people that come out in front of a crowd and they'll yell, they'll scream, they'll get the crowd riled up, they'll swear, they'll throw things, and if they see the crowd is starting to move in their direction, to move the direction they want the crowd to move, then they quickly get to the rear of the crowd. So if anything transpires, that, gosh, you know, they're not gonna get hurt a bit because there's all kinds of people in front of them. I call them instigators. There was about 3 of them that night, and they were good at what they did. They were very good at what they did. They had my men pretty upset, and I was walking the line telling my men to stand their ground, reinforcements are coming, stand the ground. But we was getting to a critical point. The crowd started to surge, and I had a decision to make. I had 3 decisions, really. But I could have locked and loaded. I could have ordered firing positions. I could hear the troops coming in the background, coming down the road, but they weren't going to make it in time. We were going to be overrun, there was no question. Instead, I ordered present arms, which is to bring the rifle down into firing position, but not aim it. Present arms. At that exact moment that I did that, thankfully, overhead appeared a helicopter. And he flew so low that he actually risked his own life, because if he'd have hit a high tension wire or something, it would have been all over for a whole lot of us. But he flew so low, this is debatable. I say he had a loudspeaker. He read the Riot Act. I heard the Riot Act. This is illegal assembly. You must disassemble. This is illegal. You must go to your dormitories. He was a savior. They stopped. A lot of students were knocked over from the downdraft of the helicopter. It frightened them. And they started running toward their dormitories. The rest of the evening was spent. There's been a misinterpretation on this point. People thought I said that the rest of the evening was spent going into dormitories and getting the wrong people out of the wrong dormitories and escorted them to the right dormitories, but that wasn't the case. We entered no dormitories, but we did escort those that approached us and wanted an escort to their dormitories. We did escort them to their dormitories. It was an all-night affair. I was relieved at 5 in the morning. My men were tired. I was tired. We were stressed out. We'd really been pushed to a point. But thank goodness for the helicopter that appeared at the right time. The other troops finally made it, but they'd have been too late. There would have been something terrible happen. The helicopter saved it, but it put tremendous stress on my men and myself. I think most of us skipped breakfast that morning. It would have been Monday morning. We skipped breakfast just to hit the sack, to lay down, to relax for a minute, to get all this stuff off of us and to think about what happened. But I don't think we thought very long before we fell asleep. I don't think I was asleep any more than 2 hours. I was awakened by a runner. Said, "You're wanted in a meeting." I went to that meeting. It was a meeting of all 4 platoons of Company A, the other 3 platoon sergeants, myself, company commander, and our first sergeant, Sergeant Major Fox. At the meeting, we was told that something was going to happen at noon. And that we would have to get the troops together, get certain gear. They listed the gear, the equipment that we needed. Make sure every man had this equipment. And told us that we would start to assemble immediately. This was around 11 o'clock, 10:30, 11 o'clock range in the morning. I spoke up. I said to my commander, I said, "Sir, my man, I said, "Sir, my men are tired, very tired. They've been on the duty the night before. Could we be excused? Could we excuse the 3rd Platoon, my platoon?" No. No, he said, every man will be present on the hill. So I went back to my troops and I woke up my squad leaders, told them what was transpiring. Took a lot of flack from them. They weren't too happy about it, as you could understand, and I wasn't too happy about it. But those were the orders. We were to overlook it. We assembled and we marched to the hill, where we joined the 107th Cavalry and Company C that was already there. General Canterbury hadn't made his entrance yet. There was an incident with the Jeep. A person with a loudspeaker went out. They were pelleted with stones. Things were thrown at them, back and forth, back and forth. Just weren't reaching. We weren't getting through to the students. And that was clear. But we stood on line, waiting for whatever was going to happen. What was next? And General Canterbury arrived on the scene. He was immediately pounced on by news people, which was unusual. I'd never seen it before in any activity where an officer was approached by so many news people, why they were allowed to be around him. And they were demanding, "What are you going to do now, General? What are you going to do now?" I can hear them as if it were today. And Canterbury said, "We're going to clear this field." Canterbury was very cocky. he was not a field commander, not a good field commander. He was mostly a desk officer. And I think he saw this as his moment of glory. And that's strictly my own opinion that I drew of immediately seeing him, the way he was reacting. It wasn't normal. Instead of trying to work out a situation, he demanded that, he put his foot down. He said, we're going to clear this field. He met with the other officers for a few minutes, and then my XO came to me and he told me, Sergeant McManus, this is the plan. And we seem to have a difference on this. I remember what he told me quite well, but in the trials, there was a difference in it apparently from what Canterbury had decided. But Canterbury was the highest ranking officer on the field, and he took charge. Our officers were highly qualified for what they was doing. They'd been in riot situations. Canterbury hadn't made any appearance at all until then in any riot situation. And I thought we was going to stay under the command of our commanders. But Canterbury was the highest ranking, and he assumed command. That was his right, his duty, in a way. He really should have, in my opinion, stood aside, let those that know what they was doing, do it. Because we wouldn't have used gas. Canterbury ordered gas to be fired. It was useless. The wind, it was in an open field, and the wind was so strong. Gas is best in an enclosed area, in between buildings, this kind of thing. It's highly effective there. But in an open field, it became a game. The sticks that were thrown only get hot on one end, the lid end. On the other end, the students were picking it up and throwing it back at us. And it became a game. Like, what the hell is going on here, We just, it was comical in some ways. But I expected it myself, because even a low-ranking person such as myself could figure out that gas was not going to work on that field. The wind was too much of an open area. Canterbury ordered them to be fired. This only antagonized the students. At first it was a game, but it antagonized them. My XO came down and told me that this is what the plan is. The plan is that we're going to seal off the two main entrances to this field. And by doing this, we're going to send Company C, who had already started to move. I saw them moving down alongside Taylor Hall by the students. I could see them pulling out, and I was wondering why at first, but my XO explained that Captain Snyder of Company C was going to go down to the parking lot and come up from the parking lot toward us as we went down to clear the field. And whatever was caught in between was caught in between. Well, Captain Snyder was somewhat of he was a an Akron police officer. And he was an NCO before he became an officer. And he was, well, anyway, Captain Snyder got interrupted by an instigator. Those darn instigators, they pop up everywhere. This instigator was by Taylor Hall in a tree. And Captain Snyder fell for this instigator. The instigator, apparently, he doesn't realize how, if he doesn't realize what he actually accomplished that day. But it changed the whole picture. It stopped Snyder. It stopped the troops. Snyder approached this individual and pulled him out of the tree and proceeded to beat him with a nightstick that he had from his police force. And in the meantime, we had moved. We had moved down the hill. When we got down to the practice field where we were supposed to be facing the parking lot, there was no Snyder. The importance of this instigator. One person stopped the entire thing. He stopped it. And I don't think he even realizes what he did today, but he did. He accomplished it. Then you see the meeting of the officers on the practice field. Now, one interrogator or expert on Kent State said that, well, Sergeant McManus must not have been very important because he wasn't part of that group down there. That I was in the group, but I wasn't in the group that met while the kneeling took place of the soldiers and stuff. Something I'd never seen before. But actually, I was trying to hide, because what happened at the time we moved down, I have one man in my platoon who's kind of the Gomer Pyle of the platoon. If anything odd or unusual happens, he's the person I went to. He was constantly causing little headaches for the old sergeant. And he approached me just before we moved down. And he said, "Sergeant McManus, I forgot my gas mask." And I thought for a moment. At first I reprimanded him for forgetting, but it was too late then. The line was moving. So I gave him mine, and I had no intention of going down the field with the troops. I was going to wait for them to come back. And I had no intention of going down. So I kind of had to stay hidden, because out of the 90 or so soldiers that marched down the field that day, I was the only one that didn't have a gas mask on. And I didn't want my commander to see me. So I didn't join the meeting that took place down on the practice field. We were pelleted quite a bit by construction equipment. my troops came to me and said, we're getting quite a bit of flack from the right flank. And again, I did not want to have to go to my company commander, who already had reprimanded me for speaking up and saying that my men were tired. I didn't want to have to approach him twice in one day. But I almost saw the need until they finally found Captain Snyder. He had not made it, of course, not made it down to the parking lot. He had been stopped by that instigator, and he now was just caught kind of between Taylor Hall and the parking lot where he was supposed to be, or where I was told he was to be. So we started to move back up the hill. And here's where I differ with some of the authorities. Canterbury testified that the plan all the time was to just go down to that practice field and turn around and back. And if that was the plan, then we could have easily joined up with Captain Snyder after we found him, after he was located. There's one important piece that has to be mentioned here: communications. We didn't have radios. We lacked communication. And that was an important, very important factor. If we had radios, of course, we would have known where Captain Snyder was instantly. It's just been a matter of contacting. But we didn't have radios. The only ones that had radios was Sergeant Major Jones, and I don't know who he was talking to, but I saw him with a radio. Anyway, we come back up the hill. Students interpreted this action, this reversal on our part, as a retreat, and they immediately regrouped. They immediately picked up what they could from the construction site to throw, and proceeded after us with chants of kill, kill. We don't want your effing war, which wasn't my war anyway, and things like that. But mostly the words chant, they started to chant, kill, kill. About 3/4 of the way, well, almost to the top of the hill, I fell for an instigator. I didn't know it, but I heard a voice from my left flank, who said to me, "Look out! Look out!" And at that I turned, and I saw a student step out from the crowd and throw an object at me. And I described it as a log. Some say it was a stick. I say a stick is going to flutter in the air, it's going to bounce maybe once or twice and not do any damage. But a good size, maybe 2 or 3 inch log, is going to hit its mark. And the log hit behind me, well, directly in front of me now. As I turned, it was directly in front of me. I saw it coming. I ducked, tried to duck, but it bounced one time before it hit me, and it hit right above my ankle on my boot. did no damage whatsoever. It didn't bother me. But about that time, Major Jones came out of the crowd from my left flank, and he started to proceed to go between us and the student that was now picking up this object that missed me. And he was going to throw it at Jones, and I yelled at Jones to duck. The major, duck. The major ducked, and this object went right over the top of him, missed him. Major Jones made some comment to don't do that, don't try that again, or something to that effect. Anyway, this instigator had managed, and what he had done, he had managed to separate me from my troops by about 15, 20 yards. The troops reached the top of the hill, and I was in front of them. It was at that point that I saw weapons coming down. They turned, the line turned. I did not hear an order, but the line suddenly turned. Did it about face. These men were in gas masks. Their sight is limited. Their sight is limited in a gas mask. So they were going by feel. They were shoulder to shoulder. And they were going by feel. What this person did, they did. And so forth. It was a chain reaction right across the line. The weapons were coming down almost like dominoes from my left to my right, in a domino effect. And I knew not what was going on for sure. But I could see out of the corner of my eye, I could see Major Jones by the pagoda. At this time, he had managed to get to the pagoda. And he was pushing the weapons up. He was jumping in front of the men. He was pushing the weapons up. And I took that to mean don't fire or fire in the air, one of the two. Again, lack of communications. I ordered my men, because I knew I could hear the firing started. I knew there was no stopping it. It was going to continue right down the line. So I ordered my men to raise their weapons in the air as loud as I could yell. I yelled, "Raise your weapons and fire one round in the air." And then I myself hit the ground. I did so for two reasons. One, I like life. And I was standing in the line of fire along with the students. And two, I felt that was the only possible control that I could yell at the time. The rest is more or less history, I guess. We know what happened. We know what the results are. We're 4 dead, 9 injured. I could feel the bullets creasing the ground close by me, but none hit me, thank goodness. That was it. That was Monday. Well, after that, we had one more. Canterbury wasn't done playing the part of an idiot. He took hardcore on it. The professors came out and wanted a chance for the students to get out of the area. And Canterbury snapped, "I'll give you 5 minutes, and I'll order my men to take up a standing position again." I thought, are you kidding me? I mean, could he have possibly seen what I just saw and do something like that? I'm sorry.
Take your time.
Bye. I went back to my line because Canterbury had ordered us to take up positions. But it didn't come to that. Thankfully, a commander, not a military commander, but a civilian commander of the State Highway Patrol, took command. Thankfully, a whole bus, a huge bus, pulled up behind us, and the State Highway Patrol unmanned the bus. And they practiced right before us what was the proper procedure for riot control. They went straight out to where the group of students were, the main group of protesters, and they surrounded them. It was that simple. It was just that simple. And that's what we were trained to do, was to go out, make a huge circle, surround the group that's causing the trouble, close in on them, make arrests or whatever needed to be done. The State Highway Patrol, Ohio State Highway Patrol, in 5 minutes' time, had that situation totally under control. 5 minutes' time. And following that, I was then ordered as a person that had fired my weapon. I think I failed to mention that I pointed my weapon at the time I ordered my men to fire in the air. I pointed my weapon. I had a shotgun. No one was killed with a shotgun. I pointed my weapon as, I remember it hitting so hard in my belly and pointing straight up. I wanted to show my troops to fire into the air. And then I hit the ground. But as a person who fired their weapon, and as a ranking NCO in the Hill at that time, Sergeant Pryor was a ranking NCO, but as a ranking NCO that had admitted to firing his weapon, I was ordered to gather up the men that had fired and march them to a certain building. And from there, that was the end of it, basically. We went into lots of meetings and such, but hearings and so forth. That led eventually to trials. But that was Monday. And that's as far as I could take it at that point, without going into the trials.
When the State Highway Patrol circled the students, was that the group of students that had gathered at the Victory Bell after the occurrence?
I'm sorry.
When the State Highway Patrol circled the students, was that the group of students that had gathered at the Victory Bell
Yes.
after?
Yes. Those that were still standing, yes. Canterbury's plan was, I guess, take them over, take them out. But I couldn't believe that he wanted to do that. I just could not. I'm not sure if I'd have followed that order any further. I just couldn't believe it.
So in the years following, how were you treated personally and professionally, being that you were involved in that incident?
Oh, well, I went through 7 years of trial. I went through two grand juries, one state, one federal. I went through one criminal trial. I went through one civil trial. We won the civil trial. We won the federal trial. The state grand juries only led to those. But in winning the civil trial, allegedly some juror had been approached and threatened in some way. I never heard how or why. I never heard, but supposedly they were threatened, and because they were threatened, they did away with that trial, and they wanted another trial because they were threatened. They alleged they were threatened. And when it came to the second trial, it was 7 years, 1978, coming up on 1978, and we'd had enough. A lot of us felt we had enough. We'd been through enough. That we just didn't want to face another trial, although our lawyers were very confident and very upset at us when we made the decision that we wanted to settle. We gathered together, a group of us, and we decided we were going to settle. We weren't going to trial. So a settlement was made, $675,000 was paid by the state of Ohio to the student that were injured or to the families of the dead that were $675,000. They signed an agreement that I carry here today. That's been challenged twice now by one of the students, only to find out that he keeps getting reminded that he did sign it, that there would be no further action taken. And Alan Camphor is the one that has tried on a couple of occasions to come up with new information, tried to reopen the case. They thought that maybe they could get Attorney General Holder to reopen the case when President Obama became president. But he keeps forgetting that he signed a piece of paper that says it's over. We didn't admit guilt, we didn't admit fault. They accepted that, and it's over.
Have your feelings changed about the incident over the year, and if so, how?
About the incident,
Yes. Or the trials afterwards?
has my feelings changed? Yeah. I relive it from time to time. I can't forget it. Haven't been allowed to forget it anyway. I wouldn't have done anything different because that would have been against military law. So what I'd have done really doesn't matter. Doesn't matter a bit. I feel that there was mistakes made. Communications was the number one thing we lacked. We also did not advise any professors, any students, any faculty, or the president of the university even, that we had live ammunition. And I feel that should have been done. It should have been done in the early stages. I still see the carnage, the damage that was done. It was extensive to the people of Camp, the small shops and stores that had their windows broken and stuff stolen, taken, which makes me think that it was more involved when they got to that point, that there was more involved than the students, because I can't see the students stealing stuff. I could be wrong. But the students also, besides intermixing with us with no problem and wondering what the hell we're doing there, that Shirley was going home the next day, they got a brigade together and went downtown on their own. They managed to get some shovels and some brooms and stuff from their dormitories. They went downtown and they worked Sunday morning helping to clean up the glass downtown, which was a sight to see. It was a sight to see.
Are you still in touch with any of the other guardsmen that you served with?
Not at all. No.
And how often have other people tried to reach out to you in the past about this? Maybe historians or reporters?
How often? There's been a publisher that reached out once, but nothing came of it. There's been news people, of course, but nothing came of it. No. I would say maybe on 3 different occasions.
And have you been back to the campus?
I'm sorry?
Have you been back to Kent State?
No. Hold on. I have to take that back. I have to take that back. I was back. During the criminal trials, the jury was bused to the point, and we had to be there, yes, with the jury. That one day. But other than that, I could not.
Has the narrative of the incident taken into account the National Guardsmen? Do you think the narrative that is presented today rings true when discussing the National Guardsmen?
I'm sorry, I didn't follow.
Let me read it. Do you think that the narrative of the incident has been fair to the National Guardsmen when it's discussed and presented today?
Yes.
And finally, do you have anything else that you would like to add? Anything you'd like to say?
No.
We are done here. And we appreciate your time, and we appreciate you coming to talk to us.